Hey, friends, I'm Lia Scholl, pastor of First Friends in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I am so grateful that you've joined me here today. Today, we are talking about Jesus turning the tables over in the book of Matthew, and we're talking about rage. So be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Something has gone wrong with religion. This thing that is supposed to bring good news to the poor, freedom for the prisoners, recovery of sight for the blind, and set the oppressed free has turned into the thing that swindles the poor, imprisons the free, blinds those willing to see, and oppresses the least of these. The leaders are exploiting the people. Amy Jill Levine, a noted Jewish scholar on the Christian texts, says that it is not so much that the temple grounds have become a place of thievery. It is more complex than that. It is that the temple has become a place where thieves hang out. Den of thieves means that the temple has become a resting place for those who would oppress. We meet Jesus there. And boy, is he mad. He's turning over tables, shouting at the money changers. He is more than angry, he is enraged. Anger asks two questions, according to Carla McLaren in her book, The Language of Emotions. What must be protected and what must be restored? Rage arises in times of extreme distress when tremendous boundary violations have occurred. She says, rage says that enough is more than enough, and that all the abuse or boundary violations that went on before end now, in this instant. No questions asked, no excuses accepted. Jesus is enraged, and Jesus's rage is targeted at injustice. Years ago, my first church job was being a church secretary. That's often the path for women who have just graduated seminary. My senior pastor had asked me to do a relatively simple act: print envelopes for his gold lined Christmas card list, gold lined envelopes for his Christmas card list. No biggie, right? Except it was. I tried every printer in the building, and that was a lot. These gold line envelopes would not go in any of our printers, and there were several of them, as I mentioned. So I had spent a large chunk of time on these stupid envelopes. Finally, I got clear labels and showed the pastor my first envelope. He wrinkled his nose, and I went from 0 to 90 in 4 seconds flat. I jumped up from my desk. I wadded up a piece of paper on my desk and I threw it. And then I yelled not a little bit about where my pastor could put his gold lined envelopes. It was not pretty. My pastor then sheepishly asked, would it worked if I told you how much I liked them? I may have hollered back, yes, it would if I was stupid. Listen, I tell you this not because I think it was a good moment. I'm telling you this because it's important. Rage is often displaced. Carla McLaren says, rage in the lives of unhealed trauma survivors can be fierce boundary energies surging to replace that which was lost in the trauma. That means for us that often this rage is not about that thing. It's a sign of something more. I believe that Jesus's rage at the temple was not just about what was happening at the temple. This is the guy who people tried to kill when he preached his first sermon. The guy that has been running into the muckety mucks all along who have tried to trap him so they could arrest him or at least discredit him. This is the guy who will be betrayed by one of his best friends, being sold out for 30 pieces of silver. Let's just be clear. Jesus doesn't get mad at people because of the things they've done to him. Not once do we hear that Jesus loses his temper at the idiocy of his followers, at the tax collectors who are cheating people, at the religious people who butt into his dinner parties to criticize his dinner guests. As far as we can tell, Jesus never gets mad because of what people do to him or even to his disciples. Jesus gets mad because people are exploiting the poor, the disabled, the outsiders, and the marginalized. Let me put it another way. Jesus, maybe more clearly than any other person, knows the value of every person. Jesus knows and feels the same love for everyone that God feels: deep, abiding, protective love. And Jesus sees the system that is failing so many of his cherished children, and not just failing them, actively exploiting them. Jesus' rage is bound up with justice. Jesus' rage is bound up in righteousness. And doesn't it make sense that Jesus explodes with that rage in the temple, in the very place that he says that he will be destroyed and then 3 days rebuilt, that will be destroyed, then in 3 days rebuilt? Jesus identifies his body with the temple where the people, his people, try to love and serve. Now, come on, y'all. We're mostly all Southerners here, and let's admit that rage worries us. We plaster smiles on our faces and say, it's fine, it's fine. But the rage comes out, right? Maybe it comes out most at the airport kiosk when our flight is delayed or canceled, or even worse, when we're sitting on the runway for hours waiting to take off. David Sedaris says, but what if this is truly who we are? And the airport's just a forum that allows us to be our real selves, not just hateful, but gloriously so. Yes, rage worries us, but maybe rage shouldn't worry us so much. I mean, if it's good for Jesus, it's good for all of us, right? Seriously, what if we took rage seriously and asked it those questions? What must be protected? What must be restored? Jesus knew that the least of these had to be protected, that justice had to be restored. Again, this from Carla McLaren. Rage is a rapids level emotion that carries tremendous power. And when the powerful intensity of rage can be channeled into fierce boundary definition, it can heal and strengthen you in amazing ways. Those intensities inside rage can restore your boundaries in an instant, separate you from abusive and endangering behaviors, and can move you bodily out of any victim-like behavior. So what would happen if we welcomed rage without hurling it onto others like I did with my senior pastor, or masking it in virtue? What if we see it as a sacred sign that we have some emotional work to do, boundaries to set, and injustices to right? As we move into waiting worship, I hope you'll take a few moments here, and I am going to repeat today's breath prayer. The breath prayer goes, you breathe in, I will not protect the delusion. Breathe out, my anger is sacred. Those words are from Cole Arthur Riley, and we'll do them again. I will not protect the delusion. My anger is sacred. And as we quiet down, I wonder if you can reflect on when you have felt anger or rage, and with some grounding, can work to identify what must be protected and what must be restored. I write this moment and praying for you, holding you in the light as you take a little time and do that exercise. Thank you. I love you, and I love being your pastor.